This is day 2 of the May 91 7-day retreat in Springwater. Usually, the talks are based upon questions or comments that people make in meetings, individual as well as group meetings. I jot these questions down later when I have time for it or remember to do it. And I do not remember verbatim what the person asked, how the question was precisely formulated. Also, it often happens that several people ask similar questions, so then what is jotted down is a synthesis of these several questions. So you may not recognize your question precisely in the way it is put forth here this morning. If you don't wish that a question is used, that you ask, please let me know. Of course, I'm trying to keep it anonymous who asked the question, except if it comes from a group, which has an air of publicness to it anyways. And if you wish your question to be put precisely the way you put it, then it would be helpful if you gave it to me in a written form, and then I'll read from that. In the past retreats, people have mentioned that they felt it very helpful that many questions, more than what we get time to discuss in a talk, are read. People feel sort of a communality in hearing other people's questions, which very often is one's own. Sometimes it helps alleviate this feeling, I'm the only one who feels this way or has this kind of a problem. So I'm continuing to read as many questions as I remember to put down. If I have forgotten a question, it does not mean I feel that one is not important. There's no evaluation in terms of sequence or what has been remembered. The more I do this work, the more I feel that I am without peers. My friends either don't understand or don't share what I'm doing here. They aren't into this. So at times I feel very lonely. I spend a lot of time thinking what I want to do with my life, whether I want to be in a relationship or not, live in one place or in another, do one thing rather than another. My thoughts can become very obsessive about this, worrying about the future, what I'm going to do. But I've also noticed that it is less so than it used to be. What does it really mean to make a choice? It seems so unreal to be here. It is so peaceful here. And there's no peace in the world. Yet maybe this here is real, and what we do to each other in the world is not. I'm seeing more and more that all we human beings do to ourselves and to each other is so utterly miserable and painful. As usual, when I come to retreat, I'm asking myself, what am I supposed to do here? And as usual, the answer comes, I'm not supposed to do anything. But giving a verbal answer like this only brings about more inner dialectics. It is so foreign for this mind to understand that there could be a state of spaciousness and quiet without self-center that you speak about, and so hard not to want it and to want to cut off all thoughts in order to attain that state. In looking over the hills, the beauty of it all, the freshness, I am wondering why I'm not doing this more often. Why do I get so entangled in my daily life and forget about this quiet sitting, not do it more often? Seeing how one gets utterly entangled in thoughts and feelings all the time, over and over again, with only brief moments of clear listening and looking in between. The question comes up, is that enough? Is it enough just to see the thoughts, judgments, feelings for what they are, with a few moments of clarity in between? In the work that you're doing here, what do you focus on? At times I feel strong, and then I just think later on that that was an illusion. And I fall back into my old state of weakness, or feeling helpless, down on myself. Where do we start? Listening. Beep, beep, beep. What do we focus on in this work? Listening right now to this beep. Is one focusing on it? Is one focusing on the birds? The feeling of fresh air, sensing the fresh air. The sound of words, someone talking. The breathing, bodily sensations. What are we focusing on? Or do we need to focus the mind on something? One may feel that in order to follow the spoken words, not just verbally, but the way we talked about yesterday, looking within, whether what is said is actually so or not, that takes tremendous energy. And one may label that as focusing on the talk, listening to the words, wondering, not buying them, not swallowing them, but looking, opening up to see whether what is said is so. Is that focusing on the talk? Or can the calling of the birds, the song and the beep, the heat or coolness of the room, can that also be there? Not shut out, not controlled, allowed to be there. With a talk, this may be very difficult. But it's not impossible, because it's possible to speak And the birds are there, the beep is there. And yet, in talking, to listen to the word takes energy, to look and listen. The mind wanders so quickly into comparison, judgment, agreeing, disagreeing, or thinking about something that has nothing to do with the talk at all. Of course, there's only some 40 to 60 minutes a day of talk, and I don't think the question was in relationship to listening to a talk, because there is a certain focus of energy in listening to the spoken word, more so than listening to sounds and sights and sensations. We cannot listen to two conversations at the same time thoroughly. One can hear that two conversations are going on, one here and one next door, but one cannot follow them both. As soon as words and meaning is involved, the mind has to do a certain focusing on one or the other. But I'm putting this forth, I found it to be this way, I may be mistaken, we can discuss it if you see it differently. When no spoken word is involved, following the meaning of words, the mind can be open to everything. And even while listening to a talk, something other than another word can be heard. Can you test that out in listening to what has been said? The beep is there, isn't it? And the breeze touching the skin. Sensations in the body, the knee, the back, or maybe one doesn't localize it, there's something there, pulsating, the heartbeat, energy. That's not excluded by listening to this talk, is it? One doesn't have to focus on one to the exclusion of the other. So, to come to this question, what do you focus here in this work? Another question was, what is the practice here in this center? We don't talk about practice. Doesn't mean that you can't use that word yourself. If you want to use it, it's up to you. But there isn't a prescribed practice to be followed. What we're wondering is whether we can be aware for at least brief moments at a time of what is actually happening inside and around us this instant, without already having prejudice or opinion about it, judgment afterwards. Or if the judgment and the prejudice are noticed, can they be included in this awareness of what is going on this moment? Listening to the breeze, the birds, without the words, or the words not so predominating that they're more important than the listening, the sound itself. Words are dangerous because they associate in the mind with like and dislike other things that are remembered verbally or picturally. That's why it seems so difficult to have a rather pure listening which is open, unfocused, non-preferential, not preferring this sound over that sound or this sensation over that. It's just allowed to be there because it is there. What is it? Without separation. It is interesting, the person bringing up, as usual, when I first sit down here, coming to retreat, the question comes up, what am I supposed to do now? This is a revelation of our conditioning. Can it be seen as such? The question coming up, what am I supposed to do now? Allowing it to reveal itself, maybe not just in surface, but in depth. Because our whole body, with all of its tissues and organs and muscles and sinews, is programmed to feel I'm supposed to do something. And to feel frustration when I don't know what to do. The sort of the preparatory thing is there. The body ready to do something because the thought is there. I am supposed to do something. From not just previous training centers. They may have augmented this feeling, intensified it, but it predates all of that. We are so strapped into schedules, what we have to accomplish, what we have to do usefully, gainfully, that this pattern is present, and can it unveil itself as a pattern of thinking, feeling, sensing. Not necessarily feel I have to answer this now, but be cognizant and aware in depth of the thought, what am I supposed to do? And its bodily accompaniments. And listen to the wind and the birds at the same time. Can that happen? The body raring to go at something and the wind there? Or does one exclude the other? When the answer comes up, I'm not supposed to do anything, is that also a subtle doing? As the person said, more dialectics come in the wake of such a verbal answer. We take such satisfaction in having some answer, although the satisfaction never lasts. We have to have more answers, and because we feel that therein lies the solution of our problem, in getting answers. I'm not supposed to do anything. What does it mean, not to do anything? Really not to do anything. Not as a verbal answer, but as a total state of being. The listening to the wind in the trees, the sound of rustling, the twittering of the birds. Is that doing something? Is there an intention to hear it, to grasp it? If so, can that come into awareness, this intention, the grasping of the sound, or trying to grasp it in order to do something useful here? And then wonder whether there can be a listening without any intention, not trying to get anything. Just what's there, inside and out, without doing something for it, or about it, or against it. It takes very subtle awareness, doesn't it, of the subtle doings of the conditioned mind and body. It's not just the mind that's conditioned. With every thought, I must, I should, I'm supposed to, the body responds. It's just as conditioned as the mind to tense up, to try to grasp. In the military service, attention is a command to tighten up. Not just in military service, in the school. We were reprimanded when we were not attentive. Reprimanded to be attentive, which means do something, kids. We've never been nurtured in allowing to feel, listen, hear, think in a relaxed way without trying to gain from it, be useful in it. Maybe as little children there was opportunity for it. But that is pushed back earlier and earlier. The training of the child's mind has so much moved to get the kids early, while their learning ability is optimal. Get them to understand, to work a computer or something, to do arithmetic, writing, concept formation. So they can be useful earlier. So here, for a week, for a few days, however much time one has had to set aside, can one luxuriate in watching what's there and not be concerned with the outcome, whether it's useful or not, applicable to one's daily life? Luxuriate in not knowing what to do and give attention to all that agitates or moves within the body-mind when one doesn't know what to do. Maybe anxiety. Maybe one has so compulsively done things all the time in order to squash anxiety, drown it out. And now with periods of nothing to do or not knowing what to do, this anxiety surfaces. The restlessness, maybe it isn't even anxiety. We may mislabel our bodily states. That's why it's so helpful to become aware of labeling and then let go of it for a moment and try to feel out this feeling without calling it anything. Because the calling of a feeling of anxiety already gives reality to it. It is really something to be anxious over. So, is it possible here on a morning, afternoon or night, whenever, walking or sitting, not to feel I have to do something or feel I ought to do nothing, but listening gently, subtly, sensitively to what is manifesting inside and out. And subtly aware of the judgments that come so fast. They seem to be wedded to our perceptions. This is wrong and this is right. This is good and this is bad. Valuable or worthless. And not condemn these value judgments, but to take note of them, that they're happening so fast. And They've already affected the body before we've become aware of it sometimes. The body already feels the punch of a put down or the elation of feeling good about oneself. To observe it all, to be wise about what goes on in ourselves, intelligent. Not in order to become an intelligent person, but to allow this intelligence to come into being. The intelligence of seeing, feeling, sensing, hearing what's really there. Happening this instant in a human being. Here and very likely in everyone else. Not exactly the same thought right now. That thought may come tomorrow for someone else. But thinking, wanting, telling oneself what one is supposed to do and supposed to not to do. And not shut out the birds and the wind, the light, whatever sensations the body is manifesting. Someone asked, I don't know whether I wrote that down, how am I to look at a thought? I don't even know how to do that. I can't give a technique or to describe a technique of how to look at a thought, because I don't know how it happens that a thought that has just been thought is visible, is perceivable. It just happens. Sort of an inward listening with a real, genuine, gentle interest. I emphasize gentle, because if it is violent, meaning the thought better not be there, or I hate thoughts, then one can't really be aware of all the roamings of this mind. What you condemn, you're not free to face. If you condemn a child coming in crying or angry, you already have judged it. How can you listen to him or her? You already have judged, oh, I know, you got into trouble again. So, can one not have judgments about thoughts? Like the person was saying, in hearing you talk about a state which is without self-center and open listening, I want that state. And with the wanting of that state comes the wanting to cut off all the thoughts that I feel are separating me from that state. Can one be benign about these thoughts so that they can reveal themselves? And there's no additional energy given to that process, the energy of fighting it. You fight a process and you give it energy. You fight the underground movement in a country and you give it energy. We're coming back. We've never been nurtured in letting be and openly observing, listening, feeling what's there without judgment. But we can start. We can start now, can't we? This moment. And to answer the question, or come back to the question, how am I to see a thought? Usually I'm just thinking these thoughts, which means one is involved in the train of thought, involved to the degree of taking it for real. One can really take one's thoughts for real. I don't mean the reality of thoughts, but that what one thinks about is real, namely that he's mean or bad or she's good. This way or that way. These are just thoughts. If we're involved in thinking, we're not aware of thinking. We take thoughts or what they refer to as real. So there's a marked difference between involvement in thought, involvement in the thinking process, engagement in it, and a sudden awareness that this is in fact taking place, or has taken a place an instant ago. Because at this instant of awareness, there's no thought. There's only awareness that there were thoughts in the mind. And they reverberate as memory. What I just thought about, what I just dreamt about, wished about, fantasized about. But since judgment comes so quickly, how nice it was what I thought, or we are agitated by an angry thought, or we think we shouldn't have thoughts, the awareness is blown instantly. And there's more thoughts again about the thoughts that I just became aware of. And the feelings that go with it. Whenever I use the word thought, I don't mean it separate from the feelings that they evoke or from the feelings that have evoked the thoughts. Yeah, inseparably, so it seems, tied up together. Thoughts and emotions and sensations and feelings and more thoughts. So don't think that I'm just pointing to thoughts. I'm pointing to this whole process. So coming back to the question, how am I to be aware of a thought? Well, it happens. How continues the thought process? I'm looking now for a method, thinking about one. Thinking maybe Toni can give me one. Am I interested in what my thoughts are all about? Is there a spark of interest in that? If I say thoughts are bad, thoughts traditionally in all spiritual disciplines have had to be cut off, or they're the enemy, then I won't be interested in seeing a thought, what it is all about. And I'm already antagonistic and violent. So we're not ever saying, cut off your thoughts, get rid of them, be free of them. You shouldn't have any. You're supposed to be free. All of this stuff, which often is how people hear a talk. Maybe I say it, maybe it sounds as though I said it that way. But our perceptions are not clear as long as we perceive out of a conditioned mind and body, conditioned in what I'm supposed to do and not supposed to do. No, we're trying to see what's going on and understand it on the surface and in whatever depth will reveal itself. And it's only out of such non-judgmental, non-violent understanding that things change easily, without effort. Maybe just for a moment. Maybe for longer periods of time. We don't know. So am I interested in what my thoughts and feelings are all about? And here we have to be careful again. Because one can become so interesting to oneself that one keeps writing stories about oneself with continuation. Almost thirsting for the next serial. How does this life of mine continue? And wanting to add to it. I heard a program the other day on television. Kyle had taped it. Somebody doing therapeutic work. He's not a therapist, but asking people to write their autobiography and keep adding to this, not to live what was conditioned into them, but write their own biography and act according to that. Deliver oneself from the conditioned person and create one's own person. It was not clear to me what that process is of creating a person, other than creating imagery again about me. But who can capture what I am in words? You can capture something, but that's not the live human being. What is a live human being? Uncaptured by storyline and imagery. Please, I'm not putting down biography or autobiography. It may be helpful. Some people tell me things clear up for me when I write them down. It's up to each one. I'm not condemning it. I'm looking at it. I'm looking at this process of becoming interesting to oneself. Happened to me once, years ago, before I was married, so it must be over 40 years ago. I took a year of psychoanalysis, and I loved it almost from the beginning, because I realized that I was of interest to that therapist. At least I imagined that. I could hear him jot down things, and that seemed to manifest his interest in me. And I became interesting to myself in telling about myself, and very attached to that. That may be part of the process of psychoanalysis, I don't know, I'm not condemning it. But we're just looking at this interest in oneself, which has attached to it an attachment to my creation of myself. Sort of nurturing that story, that picture book, falling in love with it or hating it, which is the same thing. In asking whether there is an interest in what we think about, I mean just that. What were the thoughts all about? Not to create thoughts about the thoughts. They happen on their own anyways. But to see that process and to see the attachment that grows to the story of myself, which is wrought with pity for myself, admiration for myself, hatred for myself, love for myself. Not really for myself, but for this created stringing together of remembered, verbalized, written down incidents, images, pictures, scenarios. Or can one write and be free of that? As one has written it, it's clear and therefore free of it. I was impressed once reading about Picasso, who was actually not such I don't want to go into that. He, whenever a picture was painted, he was done with it. Didn't want it anymore. Because it brought a lot of money. But there was something, the biographer said he was just not interested in that painting anymore. And artists mention that. Once the thing is painted, it's finished. Of course, one has to look, is there attachment to the image of oneself as an artist, a great one or a poor one? Or is one just painting? And always finished with it when the brush is finished. Doesn't mean in looking at the picture maybe something should be done here or there. But it isn't a possession, it isn't me. What is it? It's just something that was painted. So, One may have written or talked about oneself, and that may have a freeing effect, but can one let go of the thing? Or is there now a clinging, a replaying constantly of that video or audio about myself? That's not the interest I was talking about. But interest in the fact that these processes take place and to reveal them, to become aware of them. Do you see the difference? To become aware of how we function from moment to moment. Not just myself, but all of us. We are very similar in these processes, even though the content at times are different. So when there is a spark of interest, what's happening in this human being, then it's amazing. Thoughts that are flitting through the mind or keep us engaged for minutes or hours at a time come into awareness when there is a moment of awareness. One sees them. One sees how one sees oneself. One sees the imagery and the attachment to the imagery. And in listening again to broadly what's going on around oneself, inside oneself, broadly, not in this focused way on me, the importance of this imagery decreases radically. I should say that again. If at the moment of becoming aware that one has been involved in an image about oneself, how good one is, how poor one is, how strong one is or how weak one is, the involvement in that image. If that is seen, the image and the involvement in it, and then one listens to what else is going on, the chainsaw, the birds, the breathing, the heat and light, or dark, then maybe one sees a decrease in importance of this imagery. It's just one of the ongoings of this moment. And one can also see in retrospect how it kept one in an isolation booth at the moment of being so involved about how good I am or how bad. I may not have heard the chainsaw or the birds or felt the cool breeze, seen the trees or grass, or felt the people around me. In seeing the isolation of self-concern brings about an intelligence about self-concern and the intelligence of how unimportant it is to be so concerned about oneself. This is not a judgment, it is a fact. It is not very important. And with the decrease of importance, there's more space to breathe and be with others, and with the trees and clouds. Maybe we'll just brush at this question someone asked. Is that enough to be aware of the thoughts, to be aware of the feelings, to be aware of the judgments, and then a moment of clarity, of free open listening? Is that enough? The person said, when I talk to my friends about it, they have that same question. Is that all? Can one wonder where this question comes from? Is that enough? Just wonder where it comes from and allow that to reveal itself. The deep, deep-seated wanting in a human being for something, something more than what is, something better, deeper, richer, clearer. One person once said that was in a Buddhist setting context, when questioned why this person had a Kensho experience and people knew about it, and they questioned, well, why do you still go on working so hard? And he said, one can always be a little bit more perfect and complete. I thought you would be laughing. What is perfection and completion and wholeness? An idea? A concept? And you can create the concept of something more perfect and more complete. But when the mind and body are without division, without the self-center, it's not there, it's quiet, the energy is not caught up in it, then is there a thought? Is that enough? Is there something more? If that thought comes up, where does it come from? Where did it just come from? And can one trace that? Not analytically, but as it still reverberates in the memory or is there, wanting something, craving, lacking, fearing of not having enough for the future, so deep in us. We've only recently probably been affluent in food, here in a small, limited segment of humanity. Most human beings throughout the ages have not had enough to eat, enough possessions, enough of this or that, enough luxury. And I don't know if it's only because of the lack of food or possessions that we feel so deeply deprived. I mean, historically, maybe it's in our genes already, feeling a lack. Is it because of a history of which is going on right now, not just a past history, but a presence of starvation? A presence of deprivation. Millions of human beings starving, deprived. Is that also programmed into us? And therefore this deeply programmed craving for more, for security, for enough, and the fear of not enough. I don't know, can one be open to it? And check out sometime that when the mind is quiet, open, listening, is it occupied with want or fear? But beware not to create images and concepts of a state free of want and fear, because then we want it and we're afraid of not getting it. Can awareness take in what's here now? Not that one brushes over it judgmentally. I don't know if that is enough or not. It doesn't seem to be of importance whether it is enough or not. What is of importance is what is, without becoming attached to it or trying to get rid of it. We will end here for today.